Good afternoon. Just want to do a sound check. Tristan, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Tristan.
Okay, good.
Tristan, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Julie, can you hear us? Is your computer muted?
I don't know. Like I said, I'm not anymore. So whatever issue, I suppose that is resolved to their satisfaction. But the part that I can control is how it impacts us.
Can you guys hear me okay? Yay! I'm not sure what was going on with my sound, so sorry about that. Let me go ahead and share the screen. Welcome to all of you to the pre-meeting to our negotiated rule. This is our orientation meeting. So I'll be walking us through these slideshows today. And so just a couple of little details as we move through. We do encourage you today to raise your hand at any point in time and to make any comment that you want to in the chat. So we'd love for you right now to just take a moment and introduce yourself in the chat, put your name and the role that best describes you. So I'll give you a minute for that.
Julie, I'm going to jump in here too. Kitty, if you can hear me, it should have accept the promotion to a panelist. If you can accept that, it'll move you over in our Zoom webinar here.
Hey, just so that you know, and you probably already saw the button, this meeting is being recorded. So we ask when speaking, please identify yourself and speak clearly. You may be asked to repeat your comments or questions if there's a delay or issue in the audio. And so just to kind of give you a couple of introductions, my name is Julie Mergel, and I am the Chief Operating Officer here at the Montana Public Instruction. And so I'll turn it over to the other staff members at the OPI that are with us to introduce themselves as well. Tristan, over to you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Tristan Loveridge. I am a project manager here at the OPI. I'm also an assistant to our Deputy Superintendent, Deputy Cheryl Allen. I am here to assist you guys with any technological or really any other needs you guys need as we go through this process. So it's nice to meet everyone.
Thanks, Tristan. We'll go ahead then and go over to introductions to all of you. So I just want to share with you kind of the purpose of today. We are not officially in negotiated rulemaking. We're just getting ready to. So I will not actually be the facilitator of the negotiated rulemaking committee. We'll have a facilitator. We're in contract stages with that. So we're going to confirm that. So I just want you to know that we have a facilitator who will be meeting with us on our first in-person meeting and be with us throughout the time. But today, the purpose of just today is just for you all to kind of do an introduction with each other and for us to really kind of describe for you the work ahead so that you know what you're coming to when you arrive here on March 17th into the Capitol. So what we really want to accomplish today is to just kind of prepare you for that negotiated rulemaking committee, to kind of share with you what the purpose, the roles and responsibilities, process and timeline is for the negotiated rulemaking, provide you just kind of an overview of negotiated rulemaking process and a quick overview of school accreditation, and confirm next steps so that we're ready to launch our work on March 17th. So this is kind of what our day is going to look like here together for the next 2 hours. We'll do introductions here in a second so we can see who is all here, and an overview. We'll go into that overview of just kind of the purpose of this committee, its roles, responsibilities, then kind of go into just what is negotiated rulemaking. And like I said, some time on school accreditation and next steps. So please know that Tristan is keeping track and taking notes, and we'll be summarizing this all up. And then you'll also have access to this PowerPoint later. So no need to take notes as we go through. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys for a minute. I'd like all of you to unmute yourself and put on your video. Tell us your name, your role, and I have a question for you. What is your favorite strange food combination? So I'm going to start off with Curtis. And Curtis, once you introduce yourself and tell us your strange food combo, if you would call on the next person so we can get through and everybody call on each other till we're down to no one left. So over to you, Mr. Curtis.
Thanks, Julie. Curtis Smeby, MSU Northern. I'm also chair of the Havre trustees, Havre board trustees. Let's see, favorite food combination. I would say it's dill pickles and ice cream. Mr. Mueller.
I appreciate that, Dr. Smeby. My name's Craig Mueller. I'm Superintendent of Schools here in Havre. Favorite strange food combination, fried banana and peanut butter sandwiches, the mold of Elvis. So I'll go over to McCall.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. My name is McCall Flynn. I'm the Executive Director at the Board of Public Ed. I'm actually laughing because I don't know that I'm sure I have weird food combinations, but I cannot think of anything right now. I am a ranch with your pizza kind of gal, so maybe that's strange for some people. That's the best I can come up with right now. Next on my screen is Renee.
Hi, everyone. I'm Renee Schoening, and I'm the Executive Director for Montana School Counselor Association. And I'm with you, McCall. I can't think of anything crazy that I eat. Cereal for dinner when I'm feeling really lazy. That's not a weird combination, but that is something that I do quite frequently when I'm busy and my husband's out of town. I'll go to Alex.
Alex Ader, Superintendent, Roberts Schools, Roberts, Montana. I guess a food combination would be, this is an ode to my wife. We eat pepperoni, pineapple, and black olive on our pizza. So I'll pass it over to Miss Zentner over there at Bridger.
Hello, I'm Crystal Zentner. I'm from Bridger, and I'm a trustee on our local board. And my food, mine is a lack of combinations. I actually don't like sauces. So no mayonnaise, no ranch. I don't eat dressing on my salads. And I know that a lot of people think that's strange. And I'm doing this on my phone. So I think Christina Wecken.
Hello. I'm Christina Wecken. I'm first grade, second grade teacher from Alberton Public Schools. And I guess my strange food combination would be ice cream with Swedish fish. And I can't bring up the list of people.
Here, I'll pick someone for you, Christina.
Thank you.
How about let's go to Corey Barron.
Hello, Corey Barron, Principal, Lodgegrass High School. Good afternoon. I would have to say that I love anchovies anchovies on my pizza, anchovies on my salads, and I put hot sauce on just about everything. So that would be mine. Let's see, have we called Ruth yet?
Nope, I'll go. Thank you, Corey. I'm Ruth Euchre, the Elementary Assistant Superintendent for Great Falls, grades K through 6. And if you've been in Great Falls and you know Howard's Pizza, I'll go with the pizza theme. My weird combination is Canadian bacon and sauerkraut. Don't knock it until you've tried it, because it really does have a nice match. And I'm going to send it to my Great Falls colleague at one time, Chris Olszewski.
Thanks, Ruth. Yeah, I missed the Howard's Pizza. So I'm Chris Olszewski. I'm the Executive Director for High School Curriculum here in Billings Public Schools. And if you are a child of the 80s, you might get this deep cut reference, grape soda and chocolate donuts. So I'll go over to Jacob Williams.
Hi, everybody. Jacob Williams from the Region 17 Comprehensive Center. At the Comprehensive Center, we're working with OPI and the task force that's adjacent to the Negotiated Rulemaking Committee to gather their recommendations and supports that will inform the work that you do. So it's nice to meet each of you. I will go to Michelle. Have you been?
Not yet, nope. So I will go next. Michelle Payne from Flathead High School in Kalispell as the principal there. I'm not an adventurous eater, so I'm just gonna say coffee and chocolate. So there you have it. And I believe we have not heard from Kitty Logan from Swan Valley, so that's who I'll pick to go next.
Hi, I'm Kitty Logan. I'm a trustee at Swan Valley Elementary School. Did you hear that?
We did, Kitty.
We did.
Okay.
Do you have any strange food combinations?
Oh, I forgot that part. My strange food combination would be peanut butter and cheese.
Ah. All right, Kitty, can you see anyone else that you can call on next?
I can't.
Okay, Tristan, would you call on someone, please?
Thanks.
Absolutely. How about let's go to Stefan Schreibis. Did I say your last name right?
It was pretty close. Stefan Schreibis.
Schreibis.
Yeah, Schreibis. Yeah, I'm the superintendent in Glendive. In the strange food, I don't know. I like chips and ketchup, or French fries and ice cream is also another one. So, and I will call on. It gets hard when it gets to this. I think, is it Tara from Circle?
Yes, I am here.
All right.
I am Tara Hubing. I'm the K-12 school counselor here and the interim principal for K-8. And I guess my strange food combination would be A1 steak sauce on steamed broccoli. I'm not sure who's left here.
Let's see. I believe Rhonda Long. I don't think you've gone yet.
Nope. My name's Rhonda Long. I am the Fergus County Superintendent of Schools. And I guess the strangest thing I eat is peanut butter and dill pickles. And I'm not sure if anybody else hasn't gone.
I think, let's see. Is Sue Corrigan on today? I don't think she is. Is that
Susan, I think.
Oh, and maybe Lisa Peterson. Have you gone yet, Lisa?
I have not. I'm having computer issues. Just a second. You guys can't see me. Is that accurate?
Right, we can't see you.
Can you hear me okay?
We can. Sounds
okay,
great.
I don't know. I'm using a new school computer that we received, but can't turn on. Anyway, Lisa Peterson out in Westby, Montana. I'm a teacher out here. Probably my weirdest thing would be ketchup on my eggs
That's a good combo. I don't know what you're talking about. All right. Thank you, Lisa. I think
we got Adria and Susan, I believe.
Oh, yeah. Let's have Adria go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adria Lawrence. I'm the Dean of the Phyllis J. Washington College of Education at the University of Montana in Missoula. And I'd say my favorite unusual food combination is fried chicken and waffles.
Thanks, Adria. And last but certainly not least, we have Susan.
Susan Lake, I'm a past trustee from Ronan, Montana. And I honestly can't think anything strange right now.
That is okay. Sometimes when we're on the spot, it's kind of hard, huh? Okay. Well, thanks everyone. It's going to be an honor to get to know you all.
All right, you guys, thanks for that fun introduction. I'm not sure if I'll try anything strange, but it does give me some good ideas. I have to say, Renee, that I just add the word bar at the end of everything and makes it really sophisticated. So we do have cereal bar at my house for dinner sometimes. So negotiated rulemaking committee purpose. So you guys, what's the purpose? Why have we been pulled together? So the superintendent recommends school accreditation rules to the Board of Public Ed. The proposed rules are developed by a negotiated rulemaking committee. The committee will attempt to reach consensus on proposed amendments to the current accreditation standards. Ultimately, the Board of Public Ed will decide which rules are proposed and which rules are adopted. Thank you for participating in this important process. So all process steps are under general provisions of Title 220 MCA, Montana Code Annotated. The Office of Public Instruction will establish and has established the Negotiated Rulemaking Committee. The committee will consider matters proposed by the Quality School Task Force, which is underway, and they are putting together initial recommendations that they'll be bringing forward. We'll consider the issues to reach consensus on a proposed amendment to the ARM, and a second big piece of this is to recommend an economic impact statement to the Superintendent of Public Instruction. The Superintendent of Public Instruction will recommend a proposed amendment and an economic impact statement to the Board of Public Ed. The Board of Public Ed will submit each proposal, including the economic impact statement, to the Ed Interim Committee for review at least 1 month prior to a scheduled committee meeting. The proposed amendment will pass through the MAPA process, Title II, Chapter 4, MCA, prior to any formal adoption by the Board of Public Ed. School trustees are responsible for administration of the requirements established by the rulemaking process as outlined in the Constitution of the state of Montana, Article 10. So that just kind of gives us, you guys, like a kind of an idea of the things that we're going to be working on with our facilitator in this negotiation, and kind of outlines that process of how things go. But here's a visual, if you will, to kind of give you what that process looks like if you're more of a visual person. But we've are going to be beginning negotiated rulemaking. We've convened this agency team here. We've selected and appointed this committee, and we have convened and will confirm this committee. So you can see that kind of that first box is already done and has gotten us here to today. And so we are in this process. So we've confirmed this committee and we are ready to roll. So now we go into the committee responsibilities. The responsibilities of this committee are to consider proposed rule changes, to consult and advise the economic impact survey questions. The OPI analysis and economic impact report will have to be drafted, provide recommendations to the state superintendent. The superintendent receives the committee's reports and may make changes to the rule amendment and the economic impact report, and then presents the economic impact statement. So you can kind of see there it goes now from the committee responsibilities to what the superintendent moves into considering the committee recommendations. To the next, oh, sorry, forgot one slide there, you guys. Then the superintendent recommendation goes to the Board of Public Ed. So there's the economic impact statement report, the ARM final draft, and recommends notice of public hearing to the Board of Public Ed. Then the Board of Public Ed and the Ed Interim Committee begin the map-up process. So that's the rulemaking process. And then the Board of Public Ed presents the economic impact report to the Ed Interim Committee. And so the last phase then is the rule adoption. So public hearing, written comments, the Board of Public Ed responds to comments, and then the Board of Public Ed makes final action. And then that's kind of where rule adoption happens. So I just kind of wanted to share with you a little bit of kind of that's what the process is. That's what it's going to look like. And so kind of gives you an idea of how things will flow and what we're going into. I did put this slide in here. We can certainly, when I send this to you, can look at this more, but this is just the adoption of administrative rule, the process and the stages of what happens once it gets to the Secretary of State and into publication, and then how it goes to public comment. And so this is the whole process that the board goes through as they start to make rule that gets adopted. So I just want to take some time now and talk about the roles so that we can understand what the roles are. So the OPI has established the rulemaking committee. We did application process to serve on this committee and have confirmed the group that is here. We do have a task force that has been formed and been working since January, made up of a bunch of different stakeholders. That task force has been charged with kind of taking a look at making initial recommendations to the superintendent and to this committee. So to just give some more information so that we're coming in, there's something to begin to look at from those proposals. And then we do have an agency team here that will be in the negotiated rulemaking with you all when we get to the table. So, and there are people from the agency that will be there. And the negotiated rulemaking facilitator, like I said, we'll be getting this out to you guys so you know who this person is, but they will be facilitating for us throughout the process, both our in-person meetings as well as our virtual negotiating rulemaking meetings. So the facilitator will impartially aid in the discussions and negotiations among the members of the committee. The facilitator does not have decision-making authority. The facilitator will apply the general provisions of MCA. So the committee, this is you all. So this is your role. The agency team, and we're being informed by this task force, if you will recommend to the superintendent of public instruction people to serve on this committee, and will likely be significantly affected by the proposed rule amendment. So we want individuals that are on this committee that make up all these different entities. So you heard people today describe lots of different roles here, school district trustees, K-12 administrators, teachers, counselors, business officials, parents, taxpayers, and students as needed. The members of the committee will be selected based on the following criteria. So they were selected based upon cultural diversity, geographic location, school and community members with experience in the content, district and school size, and grade levels served. The committee will consider issues to reach consensus on the proposed amendments to the ARM. In consultation with the OPI and the agency team that's there, the committee will prepare an economic impact statement as outlined in code. So other roles, just so you guys know, these are two very critical pieces. The superintendent of public instruction reviews the work of the committee and recommends the proposed amendment and economic impact statement to the Board of Public Ed. And the Board of Public Ed submits each proposal, including the economic impact statement, to the Education Interim Committee for review at least 1 month prior to that scheduled meeting. The BPE exercises general supervision over the public school system and other public educational institutions as may be assigned by law pursuant to the Constitution, and will adopt standards of accreditation and establish the accreditation status of every school. So that kind of, you guys, gives you, two more roles, sorry. So the Ed Interim Committee, who is that? The Education Interim Committee will review the Board of Public Ed's recommended economic impact statement. This Interim Committee has administrative rule review, draft legislation review, program evaluation, and monitoring functions of the Board of Public Ed for administrative purposes. So those are our legislators that are in interim right now. And then, of course, who are our local school district board of trustees. The trustees are the ones that are ultimately responsible for the policy creation and implementation of these rules in their school districts. So they implement the policies of the board or the rules of this that have been set forward. So that kind of just gives you an idea, you guys, of all the different people and the different roles that participate in negotiated rulemaking. So hopefully I've got that all. We talked about the facilitator. So this is you guys. There are a couple of people that I see are not on here today that will be joining us, but this is the list that we have. So please note, we will be posting this on our webpage. We have already, and we'll be posting a map so that you can kind of see the different roles where everybody also is from this committee. So I've said a lot about kind of like the process, said some things about the roles, but here's kind of the timeline, you guys. And this is the, it does says task force at the top, but it's got both the task force and the negotiated rulemaking on here. But what you'll see here is we're right here in January to June, which is important that we'll be getting our work done in this time frame. And then these proposed amendments and economic statements that we're working on will need to be to the Board of Public Ed by July. And the reason for that is we've got to have that stuff's got to be done, at least as we've mentioned, 1 month prior to when the Education Interim Committee is occurring, which will be September. And so that's kind of gives us a little bit of timeline and understanding of where it goes from there. Then it goes into, starts some of that process, and it goes through all of those stages. And ultimately, if the board approves those recommendations, gets into MAPA and becomes rule, it would be implemented at the earliest of July of 2023. So our dates, we've sent these to you, but we will send them again. Hopefully you'll be getting information, or have already started to make your arrangements to be in Helena in person on March 17th and 18th. We'll be meeting at the Capitol. We will have a virtual option if that is the only way that you'll be able to participate. Please know we will be doing that hybrid to accommodate, to be sure that all of our committee members can be there. And then the facilitator will continue the work throughout April. We are choosing to kind of do an after school time frame to honor our teachers and administrators that we have. So we'll be doing 3:30 to 5. And then we'll be meeting again in person on May 2nd and May 3rd, followed up with some more Zooms, and then we'll end in June. And hopefully with the goal of having some rules that have been negotiated and consensus has been formed on, and an economic statement ready to be provided to the Board of Public Ed. So that's kind of our time frame of the dates that we've set to do our work together. I do want you to know I'm going to turn off my screen here for a second and give Tristan a minute to actually pull up the Montana Office of Public Instruction's webpage so that you can see that. And I'm also going to have her share with you kind of the Google folder site that we have that actually we're going to be putting up as well onto the OPI webpage so that you'll be able to access it. But we're going to be putting it up there for full public use as well. And so we'll be doing that here probably either tomorrow or early next week, we'll get that up. But I'm going to have Tristan try to walk through that with you. But what you'll always see up here, and we'll keep this going and keep this updated as we're moving, you'll see the meeting links, the agendas. We'll have summaries of the meetings. We'll have the recordings from meetings posted. And then on our Google site, we will have all the materials and all the things that the facilitator will be using for the work. So Tristan, I'm going to turn it over to you to just kind of give them a little bit of a tour, if you will, so that they'll know where all of this information will be located.
Yeah, for sure. I know some of you, sorry, excuse me, I'm in the wrong one. I apologize. I was not totally prepared, guys. All right, so on the front page of the OPI website, we do have a link and some information set up right here. Let's see, should be able to see my screen. Can we all see my screen?
Yep, you're good.
Perfect. All right, so we've got information set up here. You'll be able to see both the task force meetings that are upcoming and then your guys' meetings that are upcoming. If you click either one of these hyperlinks, it'll take you to the page associated with the Chapter 55 revisions, where again, you can see the links for the upcoming meetings. And then when you scroll down, you can see all of the meeting information, minutes, summaries, recordings, agendas, all that good stuff. You can also see all of the members of both the task force and our rulemaking committee. And then we'll have some additional information, how to contact me and Julie. And if we have any public comment, they will be listed here, as well as deadlines for public comment to be submitted. If you come back up, we did have a request from some of the individuals attending our task force meeting yesterday, or I guess on Tuesday, that we post the Google site to our website as well. So this is our Google site. This is where I will be posting any announcements for the group, homework as you come down, any common useful links that you may need can be found here. The Chapter 55 ARM is on a spreadsheet, so we can track changes as that starts happening. We've also got pages where we can find all of the information for our task force and then negotiated rulemaking. We've got a schedule. So if you're ever wondering, you know, when's our next in-person meeting in Helena, you can find it here. Got a tab for resources. I'll be dropping any articles or things that we use for homework throughout the process here. And then we've got our orientation page. After our meeting is over, the recording will be posted here. I'll post the minutes and summaries and that kind of stuff as well. And if you have any other questions about it, always feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help.
Thanks, Tristan. So I just want to pause for a second. That's a lot of information that we shared, just kind of about the process, the timeline, the communication channel, so that you have all of that. Do you have any questions about any of that for Tristan and or I right now? Okay. Great. So like Tristan said, don't hesitate at any point in time when you're looking at, you know, when are things happening? What's happened on the calendar? Where's this information? We're trying to funnel that all into one location with ease for you guys so that you can always have access to that and can see that. Okay. So just a couple of things that I'll transition and show my slides here about negotiated rulemaking. Let me just share that really quick. Are you guys able to see the screen okay? Yes?
Yep, thanks, Julie.
Okay. Guys, just a couple of like quick questions in question format. What is negotiated rulemaking? So this is a short, this just kind of talks about the purpose, the process, and the roles, provide a high-level overview of negotiated rulemaking required under MCA. The accreditation standards recommended by the superintendent public instruction must be developed through this process, and that is in statute. So it's really important that we understand that this is the group that must be kind of representing that. So we'll be convening you all to come together to represent all of the different interests of the people across our great state and in education of these proposed rules. We'll consider the impact of these changes on proposed rules and attempt to reach consensus concerning proposed rules and any other matter the committee determines is relevant to the proposed rule changes and updates. So we'll actually be negotiating, and the way in which we'll be negotiating is through a consensus process. So what is consensus? Consensus means a unanimous concurrence among the interests represented on the negotiated rulemaking committee established, unless the committee agrees upon another specified definition. So that will occur once we get together and start working in negotiated rulemaking. The facilitator will be working with us on what that consensus process will be. So we'll be in negotiations, and that's through consensus. So if you're wondering what the economic impact statement is, it's very detailed. It is a written request of Administrative Rule Committee that's based upon affirmative request of the majority of the members of the committee at an open meeting. An agency shall prepare a statement of economic impact of the adoption, amendment, or repeal of a rule as proposed. The agency shall also prepare a statement upon receipt by the agency or the committee of written request for a statement must be made by at least 15 legislators, and that's the interim committee. If the request is received by the committee shall give the agency a copy of the request, and if the request is received, they shall give the committee a copy. As an alternative, the committee may, by contract, prepare the estimate. So this kind of goes through, and as the facilitators working with us in committee and going through all of this, they will walk us through all of these steps and all of the details. But I just wanted to kind of share with you guys that all of these things are, annotated, and it will be really important that the facilitator guide us through that whole process. So I'm going to pause there. That's just a little bit about negotiation. So it'll look very, very formal. It will be formal. And so when you get there, you'll be in that role of really being representing the interest of all of our different stakeholders on these important rules. And you'll be negotiating, and we'll understand exactly what that consensus process is. And so that'll be kind of the pace. So I want to move now into accreditation and just give you really a high level of, so what is accreditation? Because this chapter is called Chapter 55, accreditation. So what is that, right? And so I'm just going to kind of share with you what currently is in rule and kind of the way that it's laid out, so that you just have a little bit of background information. And some of you may be super familiar with this because you've been, implementing these rules for some time and are very familiar with them. Others may have, a range of familiarity with them. But by the time we're done, I'm sure you will have a great understanding of these rules. So I just wanted to take some time today to kind of go over that. And Tristan had shared with you on the Google tour there really quickly. She said, oh, here's where the rules are. So you'll be able to see that. So I just wanted to take some time, just kind of review some statute and rules. And examine some of those accreditation standards and process and procedures, like the variance to standards and the school improvement process. So here's a timeline from a great book. If you don't have this book, I found this book to be something I really enjoyed reading. But this is written by Claudette Morton. It's called The Basic System of Free Quality Education, Montana Public Schools. And so it was published in 2012. But I do think it gives a really good historical time frame, if you will, up through 2000s of some of the things. So before 1972, when the Constitution came into play, the standards determined funding distribution to accredited schools. And then in 1976, established a measure of adequacy by specifying for schools the minimum upon which a quality educational program can be built. And that, in fact, guys, still holds very true to today, that these standards that we're looking at are still built on a minimum upon which a quality education program can be built. The second, they serve to ensure the size, scope, and quality of that minimum educational program available to the citizens of the state. So minimum and recommended accreditation standards. So the inputs, how much and many define quality. And then in the 1980s, there was a decision, Lobel decision in 1988. Accreditation standards do not define a quality education. Rather, the standards establish a minimum upon which a quality education can be built. Then in 1991, there was a lawsuit. In 1993, the legislature replaced school foundation program with base amount for school equity funding program. And then in 2005, another impact was a Sherlock decision, components of quality education still undefined and funding inadequate. And then in 2005, the legislature defines a basic system of free quality public elementary and secondary schools. So this just kind of gives you a little bit of a timeline and a little bit of history that this goes back quite a bit of ways as to what has got us to the rules that we currently hold. A little bit about some of the statute that's really critical about accreditation. So these definitions. And so accreditation standards mean the body of administrative rules governing standards such as school leadership, educational opportunity, academic requirements, program area standards, content and performance standards, school facilities and student records, student assessment, and general provision. So when we look at rule, you'll actually see that these are the ways that the rule is broken down is into these different standards. The word educational program is defined as, it means a set of educational offerings designed to meet the program area standards contained in the accreditation standards. And so we'll be referencing these. I'm sure the facilitator will be looking at them, sharing and talking about this. It's always really critical to understand what these words really do mean. A couple of other definitions, standards of accreditation. Standards of accreditation for all schools must be adopted by the Board of Public Ed upon the recommendation of the superintendent. The superintendent shall develop recommendation in accordance with subsection 2. The recommendations presented to the board must include the economic impact. So you're probably hearing me get redundant, but it's prepared in consultation with this committee. The accreditation standards recommended by the superintendent must be developed through that negotiated rulemaking process. And the superintendent may form the committee for accreditation standards to consider multiple proposals. And the negotiated rulemaking committee may not exist for longer than 2 years. So you guys, good news, we won't be together for more than 2 years. The committee must represent the diverse circumstances of schools of all sizes across the state and must include representatives from the following groups. A couple of other things. Prior to adoption or amendment of any accreditation standard, the board shall submit each proposal with the economic statement required. So again, some of that piece there about the economic statement. Unless the expenditures by school districts required under the proposal are determined by the Ed Interim Committee to be insubstantial, that can be readily absorbed into the budgets of existing district programs, the board may not implement the standard until July 1 following the next regular legislative session and shall request the same legislator fund implementation of the proposed standards. Standards for the retention of school records must be provided in 21-12. So that's just some of the code, you guys, that outlines that. So accreditation of schools, this is the process by which we accredit schools in Montana. The conditions under which each elementary school, each middle, each junior high, 7th or 8th grade funded at high school rates and each high school operates must be reviewed by the superintendent to determine compliance with the standards of accreditation. The accreditation status of each school must then be established by the Board of Public Ed upon the recommendation of the superintendent. Notification of the accreditation status for the applicable school years or years must be given to each district by the superintendent. A school may be credited for a period consisting of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, except that multi-year accreditation may be granted only to schools that are in compliance. A non-public school may, and we do have this through its governing body, request that the Board of Public Ed accredit the school. Non-public schools may be accredited in the same manner as provided in section 1 above. As used in this section, 7th and 8th grades funded at a high school rate means an elementary district or K-12 district. So these are just some of the pieces that really kind of guide the code around and the statute that kind of, if you will, takes precedent over the rules. So instruction in public schools, another, I think, important piece, except as provided in subsection 2, the board shall define and specify the basic instructional program for pupils in public schools, and this program must be set forth in the standards of accreditation. Other instruction may be given when approved by the Board of Trustees. The trustees of a school district shall ensure that all pupils in grades 3 through 12 receive instruction about the U.S. Constitution and the Pledge of Allegiance. So that statute that kind of relates to this particular content of accreditation. And then we have ARM, and that's chapter 55, and that's what we're working on in this process when we start for negotiated rulemaking is on chapter 55. So this maintains that the standards for all public schools in Montana to guarantee that all students receive the benefit of attending accredited schools under ARM chapter 55. ARM chapter 55 also requires school districts to develop, implement, and evaluate continuous school improvement plans, make the plans available to the public, and review them on an annual basis. So this is kind of what it looks like. And so chapters 100 up through the 1 to 5, 100s to the 500s have actually been repealed or and are no longer in effect, but then it starts in chapter 600. And so these are those standards that we had talked about for accreditation. So subchapter 6 is general provisions. And so what you'll see when we start looking at rule is it'll show the code. So this is under chapter so this is under 10, chapter 55, and then it starts going like 601, 602, 603. And then you'll be able to see in the very, very far right-hand column, you can click on it and read it, but it'll show the date as to when they became in effect. So you can see here, even in the general provisions, we have some things that came in effect in 13, while some others came into effect or updated portions of them, maybe not all of them, in 2019. So that's just kind of what it looks like, you guys. And then subchapter 7 is on school leadership. And that talks about, you know, like the Board of Trustees and 701, and just kind of goes through and it kind of about the assignments and the different roles that are in school. So that's under leadership. And the 700 is the biggest chapter. Again, you'll see over on the very far right, some of these rules were adopted in 13, some in 9, some in 19. Subchapter 8 is on educational opportunity. This is where school climate lives, opportunity and educational equity, learner access, gifted and talented, and special ed. Looking at 9, these are the academic requirements. And so you can see those listed there, things like graduation requirements, things about distance and online and technology delivered learning. So that's kind of in the 900s, if you will. And then we start looking at the program delivery standards. So subchapter 11 is on communication, and it starts going 12, 13. You start to see all the different program delivery standards throughout the chapters. And then we go into subchapter 20, where we see school facilities and records. 21 is our world language. 22 is computer science, and then technology and integration on subchapter 23. You can see those ones were just recently updated. So when you kind of take a look at that, again, we'll be spending, I'm sure, a lot of time looking at these rules, but that just kind of gives you a layout. So I did want to kind of just highlight for you so you could kind of see, oh, we saw different kinds of dates, if you will. So these are the parts of chapter 55 that were in effect before 2013. We see that the health enhancement went into effect in 1989. In 2000 was the class size for elementary. And then in 2001, these ones, you can see these different program delivery standards: communication, arts, health, math, science, career, tech ed, school counseling, and world language. Those last were updated in 01. And then in 09, assignment of persons providing sign language and interpreting. And I chose you guys just 2013 as a benchmark because that was basically 10 years ago. So we're kind of on this 10-year cycle of coming back in and reviewing them overall. And then the ones that came after the big last review 10 years ago, there has been and can be negotiated rulemaking that occurs at any point in time when it's required or needed. Then the negotiated rule process happens. There were a couple of times since 2013 where a few rules were updated and implemented and adopted, I guess, and took into effect. So 2018, there was a suicide prevention and response plan component that was put in. In 2019, this was kind of because there was a new set, if you will, of student performance standards that came forward after No Child Left Behind, ESSA came into play. There was a new kind of set of federal regulations and a new federal accountability system that started to determine kind of, if you will, student performance and really taking a look at the smarter balance assessments for 3rd through 8th grade and ACT. So these things kind of got updated as a result of that. So there were some definitions that were added. They kind of updated the categories of accreditation and looked at that accreditation process where 50% was based upon the student performance scores and 50% was kind of based upon the quality assurances of the other pieces in ARM here. So they kind of updated that and then the process overall. There were some pieces added about Board of Trustees and the hazard emergency plans as well. And then in 2021, when these content standards got updated, they also updated the program delivery standards. So the social studies, library, media, computer science, and technology integration were updated as content standards over in 53, chapter 53. And so these got updated as well in 21 when that occurred. So when you take a look at it, you'll see just a little bit more, you guys, about kind of what that was. But school district suicide prevention and response policies, that was amended. We talked about that. They amended 1055-701 Board of Trustees to include language requiring school trustees to establish policies, procedures, or plans in schools related to suicide prevention and response, and then ended up adopting that new rule that outlines the recommended elements of such policies, procedures, and responses. And that's kind of what happened in 2019 for the negotiated rulemaking for hazard and emergency. The trustee shall certify to the Office of Public Instruction that a school safety plan or emergency operation plan has been adopted. And so that language became amended. We talked about this just a few seconds ago about the accreditation process. And so that was the procedures in determining accreditation status using the student performance measures based on the results from the statewide assessment. So negotiated rulemaking process was required and went into effect after negotiated rulemaking and all of that process. So, and then we talked about the program delivery standards then were just recently updated with when the content standards were taking place. So I just kind of share with you a little bit around, there's been some activity that has occurred, a big portion in 2013, some things that, you know, occurred before 2013, and certainly some things that have occurred since then, leading up to where we're at today. So you can kind of see here, you guys, this is just a chart showing when the content standards were updated and when the program standards were updated. So you can kind of see here that the program standards for communication in 2001, but then in 2017, the English language proficiency content and the literacy content standards kind of came into play in 17. And so there was really no longer, like, the communication is embedded in that, yet there's no program standards in chapter 55. So it's just a little bit of comparison there. Even though the arts content standards were updated in 2017, the program standards remained the same. That's just the delivery or the approach or methodology in which those content standards are delivered. We see that the content for health and PE were updated and the other components over here stayed the same. The health enhancement participation has stayed the same since 1989. Then math, we see that the content standards were updated last time in 11. and the program delivery in 01. When we look at the science, again, 17 and 01 there, you can kind of see where some of those were updated and some of them kind of remained the same. Versus here, when you look at social studies, both of those got updated at the same time. So these program standards are the ones that live in chapter 55 versus the content standards all live in 53, except one last set lives in 54, and that's world language. So you can see there the world language content standards were last updated in 99. So that's still living over in 54, if you will. And that's the last set of content standards in 54. Everything else is in 53. And so you can see that many times when you're looking at 55, it does connect to other standards, if you will. It can connect sometimes to 55. It can connect to 56 for assessment. It can connect to 57 for licensure. So sometimes it's important to be thinking about not just 55 by itself. It is connected to others. So I just want to share, like, when you look at accreditation standards, there's really, we talked about the two pieces that get used to measure and accredit schools, if you will. There's two types of major standards. There's assurance standards, which means the minimal standards of quality education program comprised of the following subchapters. And as you guys saw in that history trajectory, that word minimal standards is really important. And so I just emphasize that. You'll hear that come up many times as we're talking. So really, I just want to emphasize that piece there. Student performance standards means minimum standards of quality education, which measure students' performance on the state assessments and graduation rates. So then that's taken into a process. And so we have to kind of put that process together and put that forward. So when we look at it, so accreditation, I do want to just say that in 2021 and 2022, there were some changes with the accreditation process due to the fact that we didn't have assessments in 20, and then the accreditation status has been maintained due to the pandemic. So that there is a couple of years here where it's been a little bit different, but that's not the normal process that's outlined in ARM. There's just been some exceptions due to the COVID. And so what happens is then they start, you guys take a look at, you complete the team's report, and then there's this guide that goes through and talks about assurance standards. And then if your consecutive years have a deviation within these accreditation standards, if it's 1 year, then it could be, for example, for a board of trustees policy, you'd be in regular modified. And then if it's 2 consecutive years, it becomes advised. 3 years becomes deficiency. And so both the assurance standards and the performance standards are measured. So this goes through all of those, and they take that. And then we start to look at the student performance. We take both of those pieces. Actually, Mr. Miller, who's online, does this and has just completed this process for the last school year. So they go through and really do take a look at the student performance standards on the Smarter Balance and the ACT, and say, how did you do in ELA? If you were more than 15% proficient, that puts you in regular. 10 to 15 puts you in regular MD. Advice is 5 to 10%, and if it's less than 5% proficiency, it's in deficiency zone. And then there's also the piece around the graduation. If it's less than 6.7%, that puts you in deficiency. Then they take those two things to come up with the final status, if you will. So if it's regular in assurance standards, for example, and regular in student performance, then it's a regular overall status. And so these are the statuses. So that's the process of kind of how schools get these 4 different statuses that we have. Let me see, what is there? Anything else that I wanted to say about that? A lot of this, this data is collected through teams, opens usually in a year on September 1st on a normal year, and then closes on November 1st. And then the team here at the OPI goes into work of looking at kind of those results and QAing that data, which is where also the quality educator payment gets established. So that's kind of the process, if you will, of how accreditation occurs. And then the board approves the recommended status for all schools in March. And then in April, reports are emailed to each school. So I kind of said a lot about, if you will, the standards. and the accreditation. And many of you may be familiar with the TEAMS report. I think that the facilitator should give bonus points for anyone that knows what the acronym stands for, but it's terms of employment. So that's the TOE report, accreditation, and then the master schedule. So the terms of employment is a collection. Districts will report information on the employment status of each employee of the district, including position code, FTE portion, the employment start and end dates, and the full-time and part-time status. So that's one part of the report, which we refer to as the TOES report. And then the second component is the accreditation component, which will include questions regarding compliance with Montana accreditation standards that are outlined in 55. And then the last one is the master schedule, which is the component that includes the teacher class size data collection, which contains information on course catalog and teaching assignments at the class level. So that's kind of the tool that gathers a bunch of information that's used to determine a school's accreditation status. This is just a really quick view. We won't go into this, but the TEAMS is laid out by different screens. There's both system level and there's both school level. And then this data gets populated, and these are all the different screens. So you see all the different things that where data is collected to be able to determine the assurance standards, if you will, for a school. And then the final report. And then that's kind of what it looks like. It shows what the accreditation statuses are and kind of shares if there's any deficiencies and why. And that's kind of a big portion, if you will, of the process outlined in rule, and kind of share some of that, if you will, in the 600s. So we'll get to know that a little bit more. Like I said, some of you guys may know what that is, but there's also, you guys, some pieces in there that talk about a variance to standard, which allows a local board of trustees to apply for a variance of standard so that they can be excluding standards that are outlined there. So the intent of this is to provide options and innovation to school district to help ensure educational quality and accountability, and create, and there is a board that actually does meet and goes through, called the Variance to Standard Board, that does take a look at these applications. So that's just a little bit about variance to standard that's outlined in the 600s as well. And so it kind of goes through that, talks about what you need to do, how you apply, what the application looks like. They use a rubric to score it, and then the board gets together and they kind of go through all of that. This is just a little bit of information about some of the variance to standards that we currently have in 2021. We have some that did initial applications in 2021. So Big Fork, Hardin and Polson for library media specialist. Then there were some for renewal under Bonner, Columbia Falls, Libby, and St. Ignatius. So these guys have had a variance to standard and had it renewed for library media specialist. There were a couple of others that did put in a variance to standards for some other thing. That's the Bozeman Online Charter School to create a charter application, which is 60411. And so that was approved this last school year. And then they had a continuing application for their Bozeman High and Gallatin Bridger Charter Academy. So that's kind of the current right now variance to standards that folks have in the system from different local trustees. So there's also a piece on corrective plans. That's a piece on what happens if, you know, a school district is not resolving deviations from regular accreditation status. There's a corrective plan for a district or a school on advice or in deficiency status. And they work with the chair of their trustees and the superintendent of public instruction on creating a corrective plan and a timeline for resolving their deviations. There's also a process called intensive assistance, which means a required process for schools in continuous or serious deficiency. And so a school with deficiency status failing to comply with the required collective plan shall be placed in this process. So it's a little bit about that. I won't go through all that. But there are 72 schools that are somewhere in the intensive assistance process, if you will. And some are still kind of pending. And kind of in there, once we get things back on after COVID, I think things we'll kind of take a look at this. And then the last piece that is important that was mentioned about accreditation is school improvement. So this has to be done every year. There is school improvement. There is a section that was put into place this past year, but normally that gets done and is submitted at the same time when the team's report is completed. So these are the components that a continuous school improvement plan must include: the district profile, goals, a description of strategies for assessing student progress, and professional development component. And so I've said so much. I've been talking at you for a while, which is not the best procedure, but I wanted to just take some time for you to just kind of see a little bit about accreditation, see the rules, understand a little bit about the process, and see those pieces. And I'm just going to open it up for any questions that you might have. But overall, I just want to be sure that you've gotten a chance to see who's on the team, start to get an understanding of the process so that when you come, know that we'll have a facilitator there helping us build our consensus model. And we'll begin taking a look at recommendations for Chapter 55 and negotiating. And so please be sure you make your arrangements to be here March 17th and 18th. If you're not going to be able to be here in person, please reach out to Tristan so we can be sure you are set up so that you can participate virtually. Take some time, go on the website, take a look at the Google site that's on there so you can get acquainted with that. And if you're really ambitious, do take some time to kind of review Chapter 55 ARM and just kind of take a look at the layout and look at the times that things were adopted and see what it means when we're talking about minimum standards of a quality education. And so that is really all that I have of you today, but I will certainly come off of the screen here and pause for a moment to see if you have any questions for me. Hopefully you'll still want to come. You're looking at all that going, oh, but it will be good, I promise. Any questions? Okay, so let's see, we could just get like, yeah, we know when our in-person meeting is. Anybody? Yes, okay. So we've got the schedule. You now know who this committee is, and kind of a sense of the timeline. I hope that you know where you can locate all of the information online, how to get a hold of anybody here at the agency to help you as we begin to form this team on St. Patrick's Day out of all the days. So that will mean it's going to be a green Barney kind of day, right? Nobody out there? Okay, I don't have anything. If you guys don't have anything, I certainly look forward to negotiating and being at the negotiating table with you.
Thank you.
Tristan and I will stay on for a few more minutes if you have any questions for us. Adrian, yes, Tristan will be sending out. We do have a room. She does have a room of a book of some hotels if you want to use that. Tristan, did you want to share about the hotel arrangements?
Sure, I can. I'll just go ahead and send you all an email. But we've got a block set up at the Days Inn in Helena, and the OPI has set up a direct bill with them. So all you guys need to do is call and make your arrangement if you need a room. And just let them know that you are part of the room block is actually called the Chapter 55 Task Force. So I'll make sure to mention that in the email that we send to you. But let them know that you're part of that group and they'll get you set up.
Okay, you guys, take care. If you really are very interested, I think the task force has done some really incredible work already. Take a look at some of their information online. I do think that is a good place, a starting place, if you're curious as to kind of what's been happening there and what they're talking about. That'll kind of give you a little bit of heads up with what might be coming our way that we may be negotiating about. So that's a place to kind of go to get some information, because when you just look at all these arms and stuff, it doesn't really, like, well, I'm wondering what they're thinking about or what they're looking at or what they're considering. That'll give you a little bit of sense of kind of where things are headed on potential proposals that might come to us that we may negotiate on or we may not. So we'll see. All right, you guys, much appreciated. Stay warm out there and take care, and look forward to seeing you all. Maybe we'll have some pizza. It sounds like lots of people like it. Take care, you guys.